I'm Mike. This is Till We Make It. And in the past, at least for the last year, every Till We Make It we have made has been a product of post-production. But not today's, my friends, no. Today we are going live. For the first time ever, since this project began about a year ago, Till We Make It is streaming live. And if you're watching along, well, you must know a little something about what we do here. But if for some reason you happen to be joining me for the very first time on this most auspicious occasion, I'll tell you a little bit about why we make Till We Make It. Everything on this channel is designed to address the needs of professional wrestlers no matter where they are at in their journey. Whether you're just starting out and you're making that transition from no longer just sitting in the front row to actually sliding between the ropes into the squared circle, you're incubating as a trainee, getting ready to eventually take the stage and entertain all those paying customers. Or you are deep into your career, looking for new ways to stay relevant and keep yourself challenged while always maintaining a philosophy of self-improvement. It is for everybody. Everybody on the journey as a modern performer in pro wrestling that we make Till We Make It, week in and week out. Most every week, except when we miss every once and again, 3 new videos come out every week. But this is the very first one ever that is being delivered live. And for the duration of this almost live Q&A, because I think we're on about a 10-second delay, which we'll quickly discover as some things start coming in through the chat. Throughout the course of this, its direction, the topics that are suggested, the questions that are asked, the ideas that will guide today's Till We Make It, they are coming directly from you. In the past, this has been a somewhat passive pursuit. On the 130 plus videos that we've published to this channel since last year, oftentimes people will leave a comment down below with an idea for where we could go next on Till We Make It. And of course, sometimes we're able to get to them. Could we get to all of them? I bet we haven't. I don't see how that would be possible. But today is a chance for us to have a more direct dialogue than we have ever enjoyed before here on Till We Make It. And to that end, I can't wait to see what things start coming in. My producer is going to be feeding them to me as we go. But before we get to that, I want to address something that I don't know we've had the opportunity to make a video about, because generally speaking, my goal every time that I make a new video for Till We Make It is to put something out there that when that video is over, you have at least one new actionable idea to incorporate into your career, whether you're training and you're in the spring of your wrestling years or you're deep in the autumn of your wrestling years, you walk away with one actionable idea. And to cover this topic, I think, unfortunately, would not contain one of those. It is only with the greatest of reluctance that I put out videos that don't contain that kind of knowledge. But having been at this as long as I have, and I'll finish out my 26th year in wrestling on May 20th. It's only a week away. And I begin my 27th year. These last few years have made me increasingly cognizant of this reality. In many ways, I am making an online resource, a repository for tribal knowledge that I wish I had access to back in year 1 or year 2 or year 3, because the first 3 years of my career, I have no mentor, I have no coach, no one to look out for me, no one that's giving me consistent formal training. And it's in those years that I have some of the most horrific injuries of my entire career. I'm faced with the biggest setbacks. I'm confronted by the biggest challenges, and I have nobody to help guide me through them. No one to show me how I could navigate my way through that minefield. I go through it basically by falling flat on my face time and time again. And I lose some of the most important years of my career for that exact reason. When my body was its most resilient, when I'm in my college years, when I have the least number of other responsibilities on my plate, so I have the greatest freedom to go out and travel, to find work in other territories. A lot of my most important formative years, they're squandered. And in part, not in whole, but in part, I think that plays a role in why I never really accomplished my career goal. My goal was to be invited to the Super J Cup tournament, most typically hosted by New Japan Pro Wrestling, but every once and again licensed out to other groups. War put one on, Michinoku Pro put one on, etc. But to be invited to the Super J Cup, for me, is the highest possible watermark a wrestler could achieve. Only the very finest get invited to a Super J Cup, and Motegi. But generally speaking, only the very finest get invited to a Super J Cup. How did he get into those? And he's in a Best of the Super Junior. Who invited him to those? He must have been very well connected. Anyway, to be invited to a Super J Cup, that was the brass ring. And here I am now, 26 years deep. Never grabbed it, probably never will. If I had gotten out of the gate faster, if I'd had a bigger leg up, if I'd had a better education, if I'd had sounder training, if I'd had a coach or a mentor as available to me as I needed, so that the knowledge that could help me navigate that minefield was always at the ready, I think I could have come so much closer to achieving my career goal. And I know out there right now, there's probably somebody watching this stream at this exact moment who must feel a little bit like I did when I was starting. That the guidance that you need is not always at the ready. That the mentorship or the guidance that would help you is not always available to you. And so, till we make it. I don't want someone else to feel like they were unable to achieve their career ambition for lack of knowledge. Along the way, I have certainly had people reach out to me who've said that they feel as if this project exposes the craft of wrestling in a way that damages the art form. And I don't mind telling you, I disagree with that point of view 100%. If I didn't, I probably wouldn't make this, right? The idea that there is some part of pro wrestling as it exists as an art form, that is to say, not sport, that hasn't been exposed for 20 years at this point. The idea that there's some modicum of secret information still unavailable right now on Wikipedia is laughable. Anyone still clinging to that as a justification for the way they think things should be conducted or the way they conduct themselves, I think are engaged in nothing more than folly. Pro wrestling as the mock sport has been exposed for a very long time. And as someone who takes the craft very, very seriously, from its athletic component, to its performative component, to its storytelling component, to its structural component, I have a deep appreciation for how challenging professional wrestling is. And I think that when our fans equally understand how demanding the craft is, they will respect it more. And there certainly is a small but vocal part of our fan base that really do not understand and appreciate exactly how challenging this is. If they did, I think the tone of the discourse around professional wrestling would change quite dramatically. I am more than happy to offer this information because I think it will only help us all. Whether you are just someone who appreciates the craft and are looking to constantly better educate yourself and gain new insights into what makes it such a fascinating art form, or you are a practitioner yourself, a professional wrestler, or someone otherwise involved in the creation and production of professional wrestling who is constantly looking to self-improve, to evolve, and to grow. And if you've not heard me say it before on this channel, I'll say it to you now. The fact that you are here tells me something about you. Because to me, the people who espouse this attitude toward learning, that is, I could never know enough. I must always seek out some bit of information I don't currently have. I must always be on the lookout for a teacher or mentor who could share with me something that will make me just this much better, just this much more mature as a performer, this much better rounded, this much more cosmopolitan as a performer. The people that bring that attitude to the work, I think they are awesome. And the fact that you turned up here today tells me as much about you. Because if you did not have that same hunger for knowledge, you probably wouldn't be watching right now. That's how I know you are awesome. The people that turn up here time and time again to better themselves and to keep evolving, I think they are awesome. And I know the people that take great offense to the types of things that we talk about very openly on this channel, chances are they aren't tuning in right now. They're probably off somewhere filling up some venomous aside that they will send out into one of the noisiest social media mediums available to them. Great. I can't wait to ignore it. In the meantime, we should get to work. So, I am hoping by this point, we've got a couple things appearing in the chat to help direct where the conversation will go. And so, I'm going to turn my attention to that now and see where it leads.
Yeah, our first question that we had come in asks, what are some things to expect with the WWE tryout, and how do I get one?
This is a fantastic question. Thank you very much. And just so I know, they can hear you? Or should I reiterate the question in case they cannot hear?
Yeah, let's reiterate today.
Great, no problem. So the question is, what can you expect at your WWE tryout? How do you go about getting one? Well, I'm going to take the second part of that question first. How do you go about getting a tryout specifically with the WWE? Well, they have a website for exactly this purpose. The WWE Performance Center website, the last time I checked, is wweperformancecenter.com. That is the actual website for the Performance Center itself. And there is a lot of very useful information and also some well-produced media awaiting you there. But if you look up at that top-hand navigation up there into the corner, look for a link that says something like apply here or submit an application to be considered. And that exact verbiage may have changed since I last looked, but you're going to find that up in the corner. Look for it there. This is the main way in which they intake forms. And you're going to be asked to submit some things when you do it. Like, they will probably ask for a promotional photo. Do you have a headshot? That's great. That might be appropriate to include when you submit. You're also going to need to have your wrestling resume. Now, I appreciate if you are an athlete from another discipline, or you're a talented performer who has nothing to do with wrestling whatsoever, having a wrestling resume might sound like a very daunting task. Don't worry. You're going to put that together like you would any other resume. There is not some major or significant difference between what makes up a regular resume and a wrestling resume. If you have references in your professional field, you're going to list them the same way that a wrestling resume includes a list of pro wrestling references. If you have any relevant skills, you're going to include that on the resume. Keeping in mind, a very valuable skill right now in professional wrestling is multilingualism. If you speak multiple languages, that's a very valuable skill set right now, and it's one of the most hireable skills in the entire field of professional wrestling. As major organizations are looking to increase the size of their global footprint, they've got to be looking at the developing economies and markets out there. We know right now, for example, China happens to be one of the most rapidly developing economies in the world. So, someone who happens to speak modern standard Mandarin would obviously have a leg up if they are applying to a company that is considering possibilities of expanding into China. So the major organizations that are looking to increase their global footprint will put exceptional value on multilingualism. And if you're an active professional wrestler and your aspiration one day is to play on one of the major stages, to get a contract for yourself and make a living as a professional wrestler, I think there is no skill outside of the skill of wrestling more important right now than learning to speak another language. And if I was going to give you some insight into that, Mandarin number 1, Spanish number 2, Japanese number 3. I think knowing any of those would be a big leg up. And you may know there are several national languages in India, but if you spoke Farsi, would you have a major leg up on everybody else? I bet you would. So in addition to developing all the obvious skills that make professional wrestlers attractive hires to any major organization, I think one that is being overlooked right now that could help get you noticed when that one poor person in the human resources office gets that in through the WWE Performance Center website is the skill of being, if not at least bilingual, then multilingual. I think anything that you think would give you that tiny leg up or make your resume stand out from the pack, it's worth including. You couldn't go wrong. And there is no better way to start to get your name into their system than through that submission process. I know some people imagine that there's like some secret other method of it. There really isn't. They have streamlined this process for a reason. They have so many hundreds and so many thousands of applications coming in. That is someone's job, is to sift through all of those applications and start to decide who will be part of the next tryout camp. When they audition 60 or 80 potential hirees, they start constructing that list based on the people who have submitted those applications. So yeah, that really is the best first step that you can take. Go right through the website, just do your very best filling out all the fields. If they're asking for you to attach certain things, make sure that you are sending something along that you can be proud of. If you've got a promotional photo that meets their specs but that you're not proud of, go get another one taken. It's worth that investment. In many ways, how that photo represents you is going to go a long way to being your true first impression with the people there that make the decisions who gets to try out and who does not. And when you get invited to one of those camps, you'll spend several days on their campus, most typically down in Orlando, Florida at the Performance Center, but they conduct these worldwide. In recent years, they've done them in China. They've done them in Santiago, Chile. They've done them in England. They take those auditions, those tryout camps, all around the world because they want to have the most cosmopolitan roster of people possible. They don't want to just always hire from a select pool of people and never consider all the other potential candidates on a global basis. That's not how they see themselves, and that's ultimately not their manifest destiny for growth. They want to have a nice worldwide representation making up that roster. But going down there, clearing all the medical exams, having the chance to try out in front of their coaches, for many people, I know, is an exceptionally intimidating prospect. And I feel you. Although I've never gone through exactly that audition process, I have gone through other auditions, and I know how nerve-wracking that can be. And it's important to understand, if you happen to be one of those lucky 60 or 80 people that get selected to audition, there is something about that process that you will not control at all, and there is something about that process you have complete control over, and I'll leave you with these ideas. Number one, it's the thing you cannot control. It's this. You cannot control what they are casting for at the time that you are auditioning. And make no mistake about it, companies that are very proudly sports entertainment companies make a television product. They are not pro wrestling companies. Pro wrestling and sports entertainment, although they are cousins of each other, they are ever so slightly different. And the end goal for each of them is different. Pro wrestling is an art form that prioritizes the ticket-buying customer in the house and the experience they are having. A sports entertainment organization prioritizes the end television product and the viewer on the other side of the screen. That is how I define the difference. And if you happen to be trying out for the WWE, you are trying out for a sports entertainment company. The priority is the television product and the customer on the other side of the screen who is viewing it. And so, they are casting for their television shows. They're casting for the red one, they're casting for the blue one, they're casting for the yellow one. That's what they are casting for when you go down there to one of those tryout camps. And remember this, you will have no control over what they are casting for. You may not know what their hiring priorities are. They need someone that fits exactly this type of demographic. That's what they're looking for. And if that doesn't happen to be you, is that a reflection on how talented you are? No. It is not. You will have no control over what they're casting for, but there is something you do have control over. You can make sure that when you show up for your tryout, for any audition you go through, no matter what art form it is that you perform in, but most specifically professional wrestling, because that is the topic at hand, you can control this. Show up in the best possible shape of your life. Your cosmetic or telegenic shape, yes, but your mindset as well. Show up ready to put forth the best version of yourself. Show up in great shape. Show up putting on the mindset of someone that's going to go out there and knock the socks off of those coaches. You can control the way in which you show up. Make sure that you show up poised to win. Because from that group of 60, maybe only 6 will be offered contracts. That means in many ways, the job of the coaches observing are to, as quickly as possible, eliminate the 54 candidates that won't be offered a contract. You want to make sure that you are one of them that does. So show up in the best possible condition that you can. You do have control over that. So make sure that's what you bring to the table, because those other factors are not ones that you can exert any control over. Thanks for your question.
This one comes from Sam Davidson. What are some ways to be ready when wrestling returns?
That's a great question. So to reiterate, if you could not hear, how come we continue to grow and progress during the lockdown? It feels like the phrase learning under lockdown has become almost like my new catchphrase in the last, 293 weeks? Is that how long it's been now? Is that correct? 293 weeks? It feels like 293 weeks. And I appreciate the spirit of this question, because this is what I believe. There's going to be two groups of people on the flip side of this. One is going to be the group of people who basically spent this entire period of time trying to get to the bottom of Netflix or win Hulu. You did it, you watched everything on Hulu, you win. There are going to be those people. And when this is at an end and life resumes some semblance of normalcy, they will be no further along than they were the day the doors got locked. That's one group. And there is the other group. It is the group that will see this as an opportunity to advance in the aspects of their game that they couldn't under other conditions. When we had all kinds of demands, when I had time enough to spend in a restaurant or to people watch at a cafe, there were things I was not getting done. And now I'm confronted with those things every single day. They're inescapable to me. We can continue to grow and to learn under lockdown. And this is a fine opportunity for me to mention two things of my own creation. Number one, my newest book, Toolbox Building Better Pro Wrestling, is available on the Kindle today. You can get that through Amazon's Kindle service, and if you're on Kindle Unlimited, that book should be available there as well. If it's not there just yet, it's just a matter of time before it is. My previous book, 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer, is definitely now on Kindle Unlimited. Toolbox Building Better Pro Wrestling delves into structural and performative elements. And I look at wrestling as having three chief facets. The mechanical aspects are the physical movements. And to really do those justice, we have to be in the ring training. And right now, we are not for the most part. But there's two other facets of wrestling we can discover in depth. Those are the performative elements, the theatrics of it, and the structural elements, the underlying nuts and bolts of storytelling that tie it all together. Toolbox Building Better Pro Wrestling deals with these two other facets, not the mechanical aspects whatsoever. It deals with these other two. In addition to which, I have a robust archive of seminars that you can begin exploring tonight. I have 13 different classes, including cutting masterful promos, understanding match structure. That one specifically delves hard into 3-act structure. I have one outside of that called Atypical Matches, the challenges of atypical matches. If you struggle to put together sensible narrative skeletons for triple threat matches, trios matches, scramble matches, battle royals, etc., that one is for you. My 2-part series that defines signature set theory, separate from single finisher theory, 155 years of pro wrestling history, a deep dive specifically into tag wrestling only, and plenty of other topics that might be relevant to you. They're available through my archive right now. We'll drop a link so that you can observe that. And those will come right from me. If you're wondering if you buy it now why it doesn't show up immediately, that's because I'm not at my computer right now and I can't send you the link. It really will come directly from me to you. But being able to keep educating yourself during this period is the best possible thing you can do to seize what this opportunity represents. Yes, I do appreciate there are certain things we cannot be doing, but place those aside. Focus on the things we can be doing, the ways in which we can all become better performers during this period of time. And the process of having to do 90-minute lectures multiple times a week, right here from the floor of my Wrestle Factory, has really forced me to explore those topics that sometimes we don't when we're more concerned with things like taking bumps in the ring, working on our throws and on our holds, and the other types of physical activities that only make up the mechanical aspect of professional wrestling as an art form. This has given me a really keen opportunity to look at these other aspects that I think I've been guilty of neglecting here at my Wrestle Factory. And not only do I get to provide these to all my Wrestle Factory trainees, but they are available for you as well, at least until the end of this month. My original thought was to only make this available while other methods of training were restricted everywhere. And I thought by now, this would all be over. How foolish. So at least for a little while longer, my archive will remain available to you. So if you've got a thirst for knowledge, if that type of stuff is exactly what your utility belt needs to make you even more dangerous when wrestling resumes, dive into my archive. And thank you for the support, because in terms of making ends meet here at my Wrestle Factory, like keeping the bills paid, making sure our landlord gets rent on time, this is how we are surviving right now. Your support means so much to me, my fellow Wrestle Factory coaches, and all the trainees here at the Wrestle Factory as well. And thanks for asking, Sam.
Should I be myself on Twitter, or should my social media be my character?
Great. Someone has asked, should they be themselves on Twitter or their character? And I'm just going to share with you my opinion, keeping in mind, I'm one guy, and it's just one opinion. Is this fact? No. Is there only one way to ever do anything in wrestling? No way. We are only limited by our imagination. But I will share my opinion with you. I think you want to keep your personal social media 100% separate from your public-facing persona, your character or gimmick in professional wrestling. And they should not wink at each other. They should not interact with each other. One should not lead back to the other. Here's why I believe this. You, the person, are always entitled to things like your controversial opinion about politics or religion or any other potentially touchy topic. You're always entitled to your opinion. And great, that should live on your personal social media. But I think your public-facing persona, your professional account, needs to be devoid of that. And I have watched firsthand how that has cost somebody their dream job. They made the mistake of putting something on their public-facing persona's social media that belonged over here on the personal side. And I watched as that cost them their dream job in real time as they were sent home from a tryout camp. I saw it with my own two eyes. Anytime you decide to take that tack with your public-facing persona, even if you aren't aware of it, you are somehow limiting your audience, because there are going to be people that want nothing to do with your personal opinions on these matters. It's always fine to have them and give them voice. That's why you have personal social media. But your professional social media needs to constantly answer to this question. Is there something here that one day would prevent a promoter from hiring me? Is there anything here that would one day preclude me from being eligible for my dream job? And if the answer over here is ever yes, I think that needs to be scrubbed. You don't want anything there that you wouldn't put on a resume for a traditional job interview, because every major wrestling organization on the planet is going to look back at your social media presence before making a decision whether or not to hire you. And to have one of those things handicap your potential for success 5 years or 10 years or 15 years down the road, knowing that tastes change. The standards for what is acceptable talk is constantly evolving and changing. Would you want something that you wrote 10 years ago to be the thing that keeps you from eventually grabbing the brass ring most important to your career, to feeling validated as a performer? In my mind, it is just never worth the risk. And of course, there are examples of people out there that do nothing of this sort, and they do accomplish a reasonable degree of success. And that's great that they were able to pull that off. But is that a risk that I'd be willing to take? No. And I would advise anybody training underneath me not to take that risk either. But thanks for asking.
What are some ways I can effectively communicate in the ring?
This is great. So the question is, what are some ways I can effectively communicate in the ring? There are several obvious things that you may have already thought of. People that wrestle in a mask with a closed mask port, their mouth is completely occluded. Then it's just a matter of making sure that you are close enough that your opponent can hear you. If you have long hair that you can easily use to occlude your mouth, great. I think that is why so many guys in generations past always had like wet, long hair that was always hanging all over the place. I can picture tons of matches where Bret Hart's hair is occluding his face at really key moments. Because we have to perform in an era of 4K videography, we have certain challenges that people who had to perform in front of less sophisticated video equipment, they never had to deal with. Was this a major concern of people years and years ago? Not to the extent that it is today. However, in order to be really proficient at this, I think the trick is to make sure you are constantly in motion. It's going to be harder for somebody to keep track of, if they're trying to read your lips, for example, what you might be saying if you are always in motion. So you never want to be static in form when choosing to communicate in the ring. Your movement needs to be dynamic and fluid, and that's when you're going to make the call. I always think it is a bit insulting to the paying customers if they can observe that type of communication in the ring. I think we owe it to the people that are willing to suspend their disbelief. They give us their hard-earned money and they come in to support our craft, that they never see the puppet strings, so to speak. They should never see the performative elements. They get the show. The performative elements are for us, the performers. The show is what we give to the ticket-buying customer. And part of that philosophy is you've got to be able to mask that. The solution I would offer to you is make sure that you are never static in form when making those types of communications. Make sure your movement is very dynamic. That way it is far less likely to be detected. But thank you for asking. Related to that, we do have a video on the channel about that. I know the thumbnail is one where I'm actually sat in the ring, and I go over maybe 4 other pointers with very physical, practical examples that you could observe. If you're interested to check it out, I think we did that one back around New Year's, give or take. On the other hand, sometimes these all blur together in my mind. Maybe it was a year ago. Don't take my word for it. If we can find the link, we'll drop it below for you. But I appreciate you asking nevertheless.
What skills should a commentator develop?
Great. So the question is, what skills should a commentator develop? I think, number one, always put the focus where it needs to go. So it's important to understand this about every single match that's being put out in front of the audience or being produced for television, if that's the case, right? One prioritizes the audience, one prioritizes the television product. So whether you are commentating pro wrestling or you are commentating sports entertainment, can you answer this question? What is the underlying business of this match? Why is it being put in the ring? Is it because we need to get the audience to perceive this character a certain way? Great. How can I, as the narrator of this universe, make sure that goal is achieved? What is the business of the match? What is its practical reason for being granted stage time and being put on in front of the audience? It's got to be about advancing a character objective. It's got to be about advancing the narrative for further engagement. It has to accomplish some goal. And if you as the commentator don't know what that goal is, you need to speak to someone on the creative team and get that information, because that will color your entire performance. When you understand the goal they are trying to achieve, then you can narrate to that objective. If you don't know what that objective is, you're just guessing, right? It's scattershot in its approach. The likelihood that you'll achieve the goal by taking a scattershot approach is very limited. My last note on this topic would be always add value, never take value away. So by that, I mean we always want to be building up interest in the performers. We never want to trash talk them or diminish them. Because there are so many competing forms of media out there, desperate for people's attention, we never want to give our viewers an excuse to stop watching. When we take the value away from the performance, it's like we are saying to our viewers, this is trash. Don't watch this. Go on. We know YouTube is suggesting more videos to you. We know that the algorithm is going to offer you 1 million more pieces of multimedia for you to watch at a moment's notice. So don't give the viewer any excuse to drop out. You want to make sure you keep adding the value. And I'll give you an example of how this can go right and how this can go wrong. So let's say that there's a match going on in the ring and a movement does not go exactly according to plan. Something gets botched, it falls apart, or it looks very clunky. Here's how we could take value away. We could say things like, wow, what a mess in there. Oh, that was botched. We could say something that calls out what's happened, or we could choose to add value by maybe pointing out how their opponent outwitted them and escaped from the move. We could call out how fatigued these two athletes might be. They've given so much in the ring already that they're barely able to lift each other, and that's why they collapse to the mat. We can add value in that way rather than take the value away. Find an excuse to turn any potential negative into a positive. If somebody is not doing well, does that mean the other is doing very well? If this person makes a rookie mistake, could we instead talk about how this person's veteran experience makes them a more intelligent performer? So rather than indulge in taking the value away, flip it around and constantly add value. In a moment, I'm going to stop, get a quick drink of water, and then I will be right back. And we'll take more questions, more ideas, more suggestions from the chat. But I need just a moment because I'm hot under these lights. I'll see you in a second.